Good afternoon. I'm Joel Franklin. Welcome to the JLG webcast series, Libraries, Architects, and Artists, Getting the Facts. Listen in as Susan Gall of FactSite Online from Lincoln Library Press and Junior Library Guild host Kaylee Hanlon offer best practices for getting to the facts. And please join the conversation on Twitter. You can tweet us at JR Library Guild and use the hashtag JLGWebcast. If you have any questions or comments, you can send those in at any time via the red Q&A box. With a wealth of knowledge right at our fingertips, Kaylee, how do we know what the right answers are?
Joel, that's a great question. Susan Gall from FactSite Online is here with me today to talk about sorting through information to find the research and answers patrons are seeking. Susan, I know your husband and you started this company many years ago. Can you tell us about how FactSite came to be?
Oh, yes, Kaylee, I'd be happy to. And thanks so much for inviting us to join you today for this webcast. My husband and I started our company about 25 years ago doing content development for large publishers, including Gale. And we also published multi-volume reference works like Lincoln Library of Sports Champions for school and public libraries. When we first launched FactSite, which is a collection of online resources, we thought they would be a nice enhancement to our multi-volume reference sets. But we soon found that A to Z sets in libraries were becoming less popular and online resources were becoming wildly popular. So since about 2010, we've focused all of our energies on developing FactSite. We have biographies, mythology, science. We've partnered with a couple of other publishers to bring their content online. So we've got a pretty comprehensive collection of resources for supporting curriculum for students.
I love that. In our special edition of JLG Webcast, we'll be talking about new nonfiction books for grades 3 to 12. And Susan will discuss how to integrate these books with online resources. So first up is one of my favorite high school nonfiction books, Sinking the Sultana. The worst maritime disaster in American history was not the Titanic. It was the steamboat Sultana on the Mississippi River, and it could have been prevented. In 1865, thousands of Union soldiers, released from Confederate prison of war camps, were to be transported home on the steamboat Sultana. But with profits to be made, the captain rushed repairs to the boat so the soldiers wouldn't find transportation elsewhere. More than 2,000 passengers boarded in Vicksburg, Mississippi, on a boat with a capacity of 376, so almost triple that. Their journey was violently interrupted when the boat's boilers exploded, plunging the Sultana into mayhem. Although rescue efforts were launched, the survival rate was dismal. More than 1,500 people lost their lives. In a compelling, exhaustively researched account, renowned author Sally M. Walker joins the ranks of historians who have been asking the same question for over 150 years. Who or what is responsible for the Sultana's disastrous fate? This book was very well researched and includes a glossary and source notes. And I, for one, was very surprised to learn about the events in this history before reading this book because I had no idea. So Susan, what resources does FactSite offer to pair with Sinking the Sultana?
Well, Kaylee, I'm happy to have the opportunity to share some FactSite resources with you today. If a student was interested in learning more about the Sultana, they could use this Google-style search box up at the top of the FactSite homepage to search for the word Sultana, and it will bring up the results, any articles that include the word Sultana. This is an article about the Sultana, as Kaylee said, the worst maritime disaster in American history. And you might ask yourself, why don't we know more about this? It's partly because at the same time that this happened, some other pretty significant events had occurred. President Lincoln had just been assassinated, John Wilkes Booth was captured, and so even though the Sultana was huge news at the time, it quickly lost the attention of the public because of the other things that were going on. However, if a student's interested in other disasters, for example, if this is a topic, natural disasters, man-made disasters, we have a terrific article in FactSite on disasters. We never know what direction students' interest might go into. So here's an article about different disasters that have occurred in the past. And of course, we have articles on John Wilkes Booth, on the Civil War era, other things that would support a student's further understanding and examination of what was happening at the time of the sinking of the Sultana.
So the next book is one of my favorite artists, Meet Cindy Sherman, a nonfiction middle school book. Cindy Sherman is an American photographer known for her photos she takes of herself, dressed as various characters, ranging in age, gender, background, and interests. As a child growing up on Long Island, Cindy played dress-up more seriously than most kids. One time, she even taped her face and used her grandmother's clothes to dress up as an old lady, walking up and down the streets trying to fool neighbors. She later went to college for art, and after taking a photography class, she changed her major from painting to photography. One of her most famous works is entitled Film Stills, done between 1977 to 1980, and it's a series of 69 photographs of Cindy portraying female cliches of the 20th century pop culture. One of my favorite lines in this book, I'm going to read it to you because I just really think it exemplifies exactly what she does. She uses herself as both a director and model. She does all her own makeup, costumes, and lighting. She suggests or implies a story. She works in series, groups of photographs related by a theme. She presents stereotypes, common ways society labels women, for example, by their age, attractiveness, clothing, or social status. She is a chameleon, changing her appearance from photograph to photograph, so that she is many people but never Cindy, which I love that she never brings herself out. It is always somebody different. The authors of Meet Cindy Sherman have included several of her photographs. Along with them are comments from children on what they see and what they think the storyline is based on the character she's portraying. The age of the children commenting ranged between age 10 to 17. And one interesting fact I didn't know until I read this book is that Cindy is the first female artist in the world to sell a photograph for $1 million. Susan, what about Cindy and the art world that could help our listeners learn more that FactSite can offer?
Well, one of the things that I find fascinating about this particular book is we could sit around our editorial offices all day thinking about what biographies to add to our database for younger researchers, and I'm not sure Cindy Sherman would have come to the top of the list. But she really has an interesting life story, and I think this book helps to celebrate that. Our biographies frequently focus on an adversity or a challenge that a person overcame, and I was interested to learn that Cindy Sherman received a failing grade in her first photography class before she went on to this brilliant career selling photographs for millions of dollars. We have a biography of Cindy Sherman. Bring that up for you. And we also have some articles for students who are interested in learning more about photography or about the style of art that Cindy does, which Kaylee just told you a little bit about. She draws on stereotypes. In the art world, this technique is called appropriation. And for more advanced students, they might want to look at the FactSite Essential Information article. It's in the Postmodernism in Art section. Let's see if I can bring that up quickly. Appropriation. How am I doing on my spelling? I'm reaching across Kaylee here to type, so did I get it? Oh, I didn't. Anyway, we have an article on appropriation in art which talks about Cindy Sherman and other artists who draw on stereotypes or the works of earlier artists. We also have a really terrific article on the history of photography. Biography for Beginners profiles a couple of landmark inventions, George Eastman, who invented roll film, and Edwin Land, who invented the Polaroid camera. So there's lots that students can explore if they want to learn more about photography, appropriation art, or Cindy Sherman herself.
I love that there's so many different layers that you guys offer that the child can just keep going, digging deeper and deeper into all this research.
You never know where a student's curiosity might take them. So what's up next, Kaylee?
One of our new nonfiction titles for elementary, Falling Water. Wright was the most famous architect in the world, but by 1934 he hadn't built anything newsworthy, so there were even rumors that he was dead, which was completely untrue. So Edgar Kaufman wanted to build a new house in Bear Run Stream and commissioned Wright for the project. The storyline in this book really shows the reader how detailed Wright was when it came to envisioning the house's structure above the waterfall. He wanted the structure to grow straight from the site. The artwork in this book is amazing, and it's one of my favorite spreads is the time lapse of building the house. but the illustrator draws it vertically instead of horizontally, so the reader really has to turn the book to view it, which I love. The main house was completed in 1938, and today the house is open to the public and is currently preserved by the Western PA Conservancy. So Susan, what other knowledge can FactSite offer as our young readers begin to explore a book like this?
Well, I'm going to start with our biography of Frank Lloyd Wright himself. FactSite includes 4 biography databases. Biography for Beginners, which is written at about a 3rd, 4th grade level. Shapers of Society, which is where you'll find Frank Lloyd Wright. Sports Champions, based on the print title I mentioned before. And then we have a 4th biography database, World Biography. In Shapers of Society, students could browse by topical area, by timeline, or by the alphabetical index. So I'm going here so we can find Frank Lloyd Wright quickly. Here he is. All of these entries start with an abstract at the top, which explains why we care about the person, and then it goes further into the person's life. Another architect that's profiled in this database is our Buckminster Fuller, who developed the geodesic dome. Our Biography for Beginners database has a profile of Maya Lin, who created the Vietnam Memorial on the National Mall. And of course, Frank Lloyd Wright's style of architecture was known as organic. And at in the Lincoln Library of Essential Information database, which is a little bit more advanced, there's an article about organic architecture. We also have notable moments in architecture, milestone of key events in architecture that students could peruse also if they were interested in exploring the field a little bit further. I just want to mention one other thing. A minute ago, I referred to the fact that we're always thinking about new entries. At the end of every FactSite article, we have a send a comments feature, and we get suggestions from our subscribers all the time. We consider our subscribers sort of partners in thinking of what new content to develop. So if any of you are subscribers or you're previewers and you'd like to send us your suggestions, we love to hear from them. The comments come right to our managing editor, and we frequently take action. What's up next, Kaylee?
Our next book is something that everyone knows. As many of us know, Hamilton has become quite popular over the last few years after the release of Hamilton the Musical. So our next book features this famous founding father, Alexander Hamilton, revolutionary. So the author brings to life the man who has a large part in building the foundation of America. Her book is richly informative with detailed illustration and is robustly researched. This comprehension nonfiction work covers Hamilton's life in great detail, from growing up in the West Indies to serving in the Revolutionary War through his final moments before his death in 1804. One of the most interesting facts I learned from this story is how much Hamilton valued his honor. He really protected his honor because it's what made him worthy of love, or so he thought. Learning that about him, though, made Hamilton more than just a figure in history. It made him more human to me and more relatable. And this is a great resource for high school students who may be working on a research project. And speaking of research projects, Susan, can you share how FactSite may help students or patrons find more resources about Hamilton and the American Revolution?
As you say, Kaylee, Alexander Hamilton has been a well-known figure in American history since the 1700s, but Lin-Manuel Miranda's play on Broadway has certainly given him a new moment in the spotlight. I'm going to start with we recently partnered with Omni Graphics. They publish nonfiction resources for school and public libraries at a middle school, high school level. And we've brought the complete contents of their 35-volume series entitled Defining Moments in American History online. This is a fully searchable database. And the newest module that we've added is the Constitution. This has a great biography of Alexander Hamilton, but also every one of these modules includes primary source documents. And there's, Kaylee, you're going to help me find it here, the
Sure.
Federalist Papers, number 51. Here
There
it is. So in the editors of the primary source document section of these modules have done a really terrific job of choosing documents that will help students get a better understanding of whatever topic is being examined, and in this case, the writing of the Constitution. Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison wrote the Federalist Papers talking about how government should be structured. And this Federalist Paper number 51 talks about the branches of government, and at the beginning of every primary source document, the editors have provided an abstract which puts the document in context. This is helpful to high school students. Sometimes if you research a primary source document database, the documents are quite dense. And this format has really helped students, high school students, especially 9th, 10th graders, to get a good grasp of a primary source document in a format that's quite readable. Also, I didn't mention earlier, but every FactSite page has audio read-along. Students can just click on this upper left-hand corner button, and the article will be read to them. This is especially helpful for students who are reading below grade level or any kind of special ed student who needs a little bit more support in reading. FactSite also has, of course, 3 biographies of Alexander Hamilton, one in biography for beginners, one in our American history database, and then the one I mentioned in the defining moments in U.S. history. Students can also get more inspiration in defining moments. Every single one of these modules, go back to this one. The final section is research topics. If you have a student who wants to do a topic related to the Constitution, there are some suggested prompts, more or less, for research topics. And this particular feature is included with every one of the 35 defining moments that are included in this database. It goes well beyond Alexander. So, Kaylee, what have you got for us next?
I have Magellan. So many social studies curriculums include European explorers and the discoveries of America. And of course, Magellan is always talked about. So Magellan was a Portuguese sailor who sailed under Spain and led the first circumnavigation around the globe. In his early years, Magellan tried 3 different times to gain permission from King Manuel I of Portugal to let him lead a voyage, a quick passage to Spice Islands. Manuel turned him down all 3 times and even gave him permission to sail with a different country. So that's exactly what Magellan did. Magellan convinced King Charles, who was just 18 at the time, to let him find a passage for Spain to these lavish islands. Permission is granted, and soon Magellan has a crew of 5 ships and a mix of sailors of Spanish and Portuguese descent. The journey was not easy, as readers will discover through this detailed and well-researched account. And in the end, only 1 ship makes it back to Spain with 18 survivors. But Magellan and his crew, despite all that they lost at sea, discover that beyond Europe, people existed in large numbers. Ended were the tales of boiling waters and sailing over the edge of the earth, and the world was now a much larger place as previously thought, as they added over 7,000 miles to the globe by sailing the Pacific Ocean. Susan, as our young readers dig into this story, how can FactSite help them learn more about Magellan and the world he knew?
Let's see, Kaylee. Let's get back here to FactSite. We'll start with a simple point. FactSite Biography for Beginners includes a number of different indexes, special topic indexes, Colonial America, the Presidents. Clicking here on the World Explorers icon will take you to biographies of 103 explorers. The earliest one is Hanno, who was exploring around the coast of Africa in 500 BC. We have modern-day explorers also, like Steve Earle, who's an oceanographer, Mae Jemison, the astronaut. Magellan is certainly one who's included here. Then we also have, in our American history database, in the Eras in American History, there's a section, European Exploration of the Americas. We know that the European explorers were trying to find a route to Asia that would be a water route. Magellan sailed around the tip of South America. Other explorers sailed different routes. Christopher Columbus, etc., sailed different routes. Here's Magellan's route. This map is interactive. Students can click on any of the explorers to learn more about that explorer. And if you click in the lower left-hand corner of the map, you see the population of native peoples at the time of European exploration. There's also a really interesting section on the Northwest Passage. Oh, I went back too far. On the Northwest Passage, which describes the explorers who were seeking a route to Asia through the north. People like Martin Frobisher, who's well known in Canada. These are the principal explorers. Baffin, Henry Hudson, Cartier, and John Cabot. So students can learn about the different routes that Europeans were trying to use to find a route to Asia. In addition, students can also examine the age of exploration in other fields of endeavor, because there was a lot going on in Europe and elsewhere at the time of the explorers. So I think there are lots of ways that students can dip into this particular area in history and find rich material to study.
And our final title is an elementary book about a man who dug for the right answers and collected an abundant resource of information, and that was Schomburg. One of my favorite lines from this book is, "He was a war to combat ignorance and shatter lies," which I think is very impactful. Arturo Schomburg was an Afro-Puerto Rican man who brought to light the great historical accomplishments of Latin Americans and African Americans through his research of rare books, arts, and prints. Beautifully illustrated and elegantly written in verse, Schomburg's passion comes to life for readers of all ages. And I'm going to read from the book because it is one of my favorites this season. And I think it's way more impactful than I could ever tell you. Epitaph 1938. If this proverb, "a book is like a garden carried in a pocket," is true, then Arturo Alfonso Schomburg, the historian and book collector, had a green thumb and harvest of pride. There was no field of human endeavor that he did not till with his determined hand, that he did not sow with seeds of curiosity, where he did not weed out lies and half-truths, or that he did not water with a growing sense of African awareness and heritage. If a book is a garden carried in a pocket, then Schomburg yielded a bumper crop, blanketed Mount Kilimanjaro with African violets. I just love that passage so much. It's one of my absolute favorites. I want to thank Susan for joining us today. I hope you all gathered. Oh, I'm sorry. I totally skipped the fact set part. Oh. Rushing around. Okay. So, Susan, what kind of information can you offer as our young readers dig into Schomburg?
Well, I guess I'd heard about the Schomburg Center in New York, but I'd never really thought about the man who started it. This story is quite fascinating. We have a biography of Schomburg, of course, but he was an active leader in the Harlem Renaissance, so I want to suggest that students might want to dip into the biographies of some of the other names that are mentioned in the book, like people like Benjamin Banneker, Phyllis Wheatley, Frederick Douglass, Langston Hughes. These are all biographies that appear in FactSite. And at the end of each biography, there's a link that says find articles similar. And so if students are finding themselves really drawn into learning about people, the leaders of the Harlem Renaissance, they can use that link to take them to browse further. In addition, to go back to our defining moments in American history again, there is a section on the Harlem Renaissance. Again, we've got biographies. Every one of these modules follows a similar format where there's a prologue, what were the conditions at the time of this particular event or movement in America, then essays that describe different aspects of the movement or event. The final essay will be the legacy. Why do we care about the Harlem Renaissance today? We've got topic spotlights, which are small little sidebars, and then, of course, again, we get the primary sources. So you can dip in here, see who else was active and influential during this period, and learn more about the rich resources that Schomburg was able to gather and collect about African Americans, Latin Americans, and people who were making a difference during that era. We also, incidentally, this isn't included in my, I have handouts on each of these books included in the webinar handouts. We also have an extensive collection on the history of libraries, and we all want to also honor Andrew Carnegie, who gave about $50 million to establish 2,800 libraries across the country. So Schomburg, Carnegie, we're grateful to them for the work they did and the inspiration they had to bring us all their rich collections of material.
Those handouts that Susan just mentioned can be found in the resource folder. And now I want to thank Susan for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure to be able to talk to you today. And I hope all of you listening gathered useful tips on how to find great research, as well as added nonfiction titles to your must-read list. And remember, in addition to telling you about great books, we are also creating resources to help you use these books. You'll find resources for today and other selections in our JLG Book Talk to Go Fall 2017 Live Binder. You can look on the book details page for a link to the Live Binder resources so you'll find everything you need on our website. Tune in next time on October 31st as Deborah is joined by Jennifer, a JLG book talker, as they present spooky, scary, and suspenseful books perfect for grades K to 12.
Thanks, Kaylee. And check out our website after this for the recap blog post. You'll find a list of all the books we mentioned and discussed. Don't miss these links to their book detail pages and plenty of other resources. Once again, now is a good time to go ahead and click on the certificate folder. You can print your certificate of attendance. Thanks again to our guest, Susan Gall, for spending some time with us. Thanks to you, our listeners, for supporting these authors and illustrators with your time. Be sure to ask your account rep about all of our books and categories. If you have any questions, they're happy to give you some more information. And after this webcast, you'll receive a very short survey. And if you have time, thanks again for making time to give us some feedback. Tomorrow, you'll receive an automatic email regarding the webinar. If you follow the link, you can watch the archive webinar and print your certificate of attendance then after 10 minutes of viewing. So, until next time, thanks again for joining us, and happy reading.
Joel, may I jump in here? This is Susan again. I'd like to encourage anyone who's on the webinar today who would like to preview FactSite to get in touch with us. You see the contact information here. We'll also be making our resources available through the webinar handouts page. And we do have a special offer for JLG webinar participants. You can have a trial of FactSite through the end of the year. That's about 2.5 months of trial. It's a month and a half longer than usual. So it's a special offer just for you. We hope you'll take advantage of it. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Susan, for that great offer. And thank you, everyone, for listening.